Hello, my friends. It's Andy over at today's CBD Oil coming to you live from Brea, California. It is 3:30. I know this is unusual time, but the person I'm talking to is on the East Coast, so this is the perfect time for them. And this is going to be it's an exciting show for me because I heard this fantastic lady speak in Dallas at one of our events for Overcome Nation. And although we had been friends on Facebook, I had no idea what she was going to talk about, and it just moved me so much to hear her life story and the things that she has gone through. And I just had to bring her on my show so that all of you could hear the story and learn from her about how to overcome, not just minor challenges, but some pretty significant challenges. And I think you'll really enjoy this show. So when we come back, I'll be interviewing Heather Blasi. Hey there, Heather. How you doing?
Good. I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. You were just telling me you just got done cooking dinner. What was it again that you were cooking?
Penny alla vodka. I know some of our guests will know that. Apparently, you don't know what the heck it is.
No, you just rolled off your tongue like I was supposed to know what that was.
I'm 25% Italian, so I try and pull it out whenever I possibly can.
All right. Well, I have to look up that recipe. I love cooking, so I'm going to have to definitely look that up. So Heather, I want to jump right into this because your story is lengthy, and I don't want to keep you all day because I know you have boys and they're probably going to be waiting for you here. But just first of all, you are a single mother of two boys, correct?
Yes.
Living in the New York area. You, besides being a part of ASEO and Overcome Nation, are you doing anything else?
Yeah. Currently, I am a school counselor in a middle school on Long Island. Yes. Yes.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's got to be challenging.
It is. Yeah. It's a fun job though. I like it.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to again jump right in. Normally, I would have somebody tell their story right off the bat, but what we're here for is your story, and your first challenge starts at a very early age. Can you share a little bit about how what happened right after you were born?
Yeah. Right after I was born, I actually became very ill. Right, about maybe about a year old, maybe a little over a year old. I became very ill, and the doctors couldn't really put their finger on what was going on. I was bleeding internally, and back in the day, they didn't have the medical advances in testing and things that they do now. But they thought they thought that I had leukemia, and they told my parents that I wasn't going to survive, and suggested that I be airlifted to a hospital that was more equipped to kind of deal or manage whatever it is that I was going through. And they kind of nixed that plan because they told my parents I probably would die on the way. So wound up sticking at the hospital that I was admitted into, which was close to where I grew up, and they transfused me. I had a couple of blood transfusions. And here I am today. Interestingly enough, my parents said that they kind of saw like a fight in my eyes, that I wasn't really going anywhere, kind of thing.
Right. Do you feel that maybe this may be the first time, I don't know if you've looked into this, psychologically or anything like that, but do you think that at some point or in some way that the being able to overcome that and live when they didn't think you were going to live, set something up in your genetics? Do you think that that's possible?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I talk a lot about kind of like an intrinsic grit and intrinsic motivation, and I think that sometimes, people are kind of born with, I have two boys, like you mentioned, and, I kind of see that one might have a little more intrinsic grit than the other one. And so I think it's also, it's something that, could be a component of your overall, functioning and things of that nature. But I really think that, like, without getting too spiritual, whatever, but I think that might have been kind of instilled in me for a reason, in life.
Right. So then after this, you start to get a little bit older. And how soon did you find the next phase of your life in gymnastics?
I was small. I was young. I mean, my parents put me in, at a very early age. I was kind of a little bit of a hyperactive kid and bouncing off, the furniture and such. And around 5 years old, they kind of just enrolled me in, like every parent does. They put their kid in activities, and more so because they like, she's going to get hurt. I'm doing this. I don't know. And so they're like, maybe she'll learn the proper way. And I kind of just, it took off with it. I was always tiny in stature. And gymnastics is a mental sport, in a lot of ways. And I think that like that grit, kind of showed itself as I was, training and obviously I had some talent, but it's a tough sport. And so like I really found a love for it, and it just took off with it. And I was a competitive gymnast for, a big part of my life.
Was your thought that you were going to go to the Olympics with gymnastics?
Yeah, at one point, there were some coaches down south who wanted to kind of take me on to, Olympic training and things. And it would have required like a move for my family. It required them to send me away. And it just wasn't something that they wanted, to break up the family or to send me away, or, to kind of, because, I have two siblings, so that would have been, all the attention on me. And so, yeah, I mean, and I think that they wanted me to have a life too, outside of the sport, and not just have me in the gym all the time. So, I think they made a good decision with that.
But then your talents actually did take you, further in gymnastics, where you got a couple scholarships, right? And you ended up going to Penn State.
Yeah, I was recruited pretty heavily my junior year in high school. Pretty much by most of the programs in the United States. And I decided to attend Penn State. Yes, I got a full scholarship to Penn State.
And you're competing and you're doing really well. And then what happens?
Tons of injuries. I mean, my freshman year was rough. I had like kind of had a moment where I collapsed in the gym one day, and I had like emergency gallbladder surgery. Like I was 18 years old. It was like something like the doctors were like, this is an anomaly. Like it's like I think they say it's usually like the 3 Fs, like female, fat, and 50. And I was like, I only had one of those. I was female and, intense athlete in phenomenal shape. And so I went in and I had emergency surgery for my gallbladder. And upon trying to really, after that, trying to kind of kick it up a notch to get back into shape, I wound up like semi-dislocating my shoulder and just surgery and then an injured knee. So I had about like 4 surgeries, I think, my freshman year, and between my freshman and like the beginning of my sophomore year in college.
Wow.
So yeah, it was pretty tough.
So your life had, not, I don't know if consumed is the right, but I know other people that have competed at a high level, and it becomes a huge part of their life. And did you find that suddenly you could no longer participate in gymnastics?
I mean, in my mind, it wasn't an option. My coaches kind of tried to steer me in that direction at some point, because they have to, I guess they have to be realistic and saying like, she's pretty banged up, and they called me up one day after one of my procedures and were like, offered me kind of like just to take my scholarship and walk away from the sport entirely. And that made me, that kind of fired me up a bit. I always had that personality where it was, tell me I can't do something, I'm going to show you that I can. And so, I was, and I'm, for me, it was quitting, and I'm not a quitter, and it would have been just taking the easy way out. And so I was like, no, I'm going to rehab, and I'm going to get back, and I'm going to do what I have to do. And, I think they were impressed by my tenacity, or stubbornness, whichever you may want to look at it as, but I wound up kind of fighting back and, becoming the captain of my team my senior year, and, really having a successful junior and senior year in college.
Oh, wow. I think I must have missed that part that you were so injured, because there was a part that I thought you got so injured and the gallbladder and all that kind of stuff that it had to end. But you that's another part of your story, right? You overcame that and ended up becoming the captain of the team.
Yeah. Yep.
That's amazing. Well, all right. I'm going to add that to my list here of your stuff. Did I miss anything else? Anything else happened to you? A major car crash or anything like that?
No, not yet.
Yeah, we better knock on wood. Well, now I got to get to the other part that was at least a huge part of your story, and really I was just blown away by this aspect. But the next heartbreak in your life began with the love of your life, at least at the time. Do you mind sharing? This is good. This is a really important part of your life, I think, and I think it would be important for people to hear it.
Yeah, sure. Ironically, when I signed for my scholarship, I had a few weeks later had been introduced to a guy, Mike Murphy. Mike, you guys know him as Michael Murphy, and we had met through like a mutual friends, whatever, and he had shared with me, that he was already a student at Penn State the first day I met him. So, we became fast friends, and I remember my freshman year in college, when I first arrived at the campus, he had already found my number and called me and, showed me around and just became sort of like this rock, this was always a guy that was there for all of my surgeries, all my competitions, all like the hardships, even through, we didn't date right in the beginning. So, even through like my dating with other men, he always took their side. It was pretty funny. But and as our relationship kind of developed, we had a real strong foundation. We're super, super close, and he was a big part of my family. And then he graduated. He was 2 years older than me, so he graduated, and he kind of was on this path where he didn't really know where to head. There was this expectation sort of in his family, because he was very bright, to kind of follow the footsteps of his father, who was an attorney, but he just didn't have that personality. He was always like what we talk a lot about is servant leadership. He was always a leader, and he loved to serve. He loved to do things for others. He loved to just whatever he could do to help others was really his purpose. And so, he had a tough time connecting with like desk jobs and whatever, and kind of using his, just solely using his brain. And so, he did some odd jobs for a while, and I was still competing in college. And right around the time that I, graduated, he had shared with me that he was going to become a Navy SEAL, and I got really mad at him. And I said, "No, you're not." And he said, "Yes, I am." And I said, "Oh boy," because I knew he would do it. He was stubborn like me and tenacious, and we shared. People would say we were cut from the same cloth. And he had some people that weren't too happy about it. That had expectations of him to kind of do this, like we like to call an employee kind of job, where you come in and trade time for dollars. But that wasn't for him. So he went through training successfully. He did, have some hiccups there, and, became a Navy SEAL. And so, during this time, we kind of parted ways a tiny bit, because I went to graduate school and he was doing his thing out in Coronado and San Diego. But people would always say that they always knew we would wind up together. Like, they always knew how much we loved each other. There was no denying it. It was a true unconditional love. And, we reconnected a little bit after 9/11 happened, because I was super, worried about him. Of course, it was the first guys to go over. And so,
Right.
so we reconnected, and shortly after that, we were engaged, and I left my job here in New York, and I moved out to Hawaii with him. I got a job out in a school there, and I was working, for about 11 months. And, during that time, he went out on a mission, which is, I'm sure, very familiar to many people who are watching this and who may watch this subsequent to the live. The movie Lone Survivor, but he lost his life overseas in June of 2005. Wow.
And he, from what I remember, he was not actually supposed to go right off the bat, right?
No, they're not supposed to tell anybody where they are or where they're going, but he always kind of found a way. We had like one of those relationships where he can say like a word, and I knew what he was saying when it wasn't really the word. We had a very unique relationship. So he can kind of like code word to me, but I knew that, he was supposed to go to Iraq for 3 months and Afghanistan for 3 months. So 6 months total deployment. And when this whole thing went down, and we first got word of a helicopter being shot down, it was the first thing I saw on the news. I had an instant feeling that he was involved, even though he wasn't supposed to be in Afghanistan. And it actually took multiple phone calls to his, to other Navy SEALs, multiple phone calls to other guys who were deployed, or wives or other significant others, and his father, to be like, me trying to convince them that he, they were all like, yeah, he's not there. I'm like, no, he's there. And what happened was they did wind up kind of swapping him out with another officer last minute. I guess they felt he was, like not more equipped for the mission, but that, there was a reason for it. Maybe there was some relationships within the guys. I don't know. But they did wind up switching him out, at the last minute. So he was indeed over there. And, that was a hard pill to swallow, of course, knowing that information at first. When the helicopter goes down, you don't know where the person is.
Right. Were you close with his family? Not to get too personal, but were you close?
Yeah, yeah. Well, we were close, and we were also geographically close. So at the time when the event happened, I was home from Hawaii. I was visiting my family. I was planning my wedding, so I was home and on a break from my job. And his family, he grew up about, I want to say 15 minutes from me. So I was able to drive over to his father's house when I, got word of that helicopter going down, and he and I were, chatting and trying to figure out where the heck he was. We were trying to track things, kind of his bank account and him taking money out of like ATMs in Bahrain and all these other places. So it was, but yes, we were close. We were probably, we met in 1996. So he died 2005, and we lived at each other's houses. So
right. How soon after you found out that he had been killed did you find out about the heroics and what he had done to attempt to save his men?
Yeah, it's hard to remember. Yeah. There's a lot of fuzziness to that time. Sure. Because there was like a period of time. His tombstone actually originally said July 4th, the day that he died, because it was the day that they actually found him. But they had to like go back and realize that actually they died on June 28th. And so so they were missing in action, as far as we thought, for several days, 6 days or so. And then there's a lot of details that are not only not unknown, but that can't be released from the military. It's confidential. You know what I mean? They can't go out and just tell the families, what they were doing out there on that mission, or what the end result was, or whatever. So it did take some time before we had details. But I think the first time that I heard details of like the mission itself and what he had done and actually how he had died was at the funeral. When they spoke about his heroic actions and they were in a firefight for quite some time. So he had quite a number of gunshot wounds and things like that. So, sure. So that was hard to hear, but yeah, so I would say, hey, maybe someone told me before then, but I was kind of not in the best state of mind to receive information,
Yeah. And none of that surprised you that he did that.
No, not for a minute. Not for a minute. Not for a minute. I've said to a lot of people, because people will say, how do you get through something like that? How do you, and, I got to be honest with you. I think that if he were a guy that would have made it out, it would have been really bad. I think that I'm not surprised. He's the same guy that used to literally it's kind of like cliche, but give you the shirt off your back. That's what he did. He was so selfless that I don't even know if there's like a word to like describe that, but the fact that he put his life on the line for his men, did not shock me for not 1 second. That 100% was his personality from even a very small child. That was just who he was. He was very protective of, those he respected and those he loved.
One of the stories I like that I found is at one point, one of his the memorials was destroyed. A 14-year-old kid had broken the memorial, and they were interviewing the lone survivor, and now his name just escaped me. What's his name?
Marcus Luttrell.
Marcus. And they're interviewing him, and they asked him, what do you think Mike would say to this 14-year-old boy? And he said, "What I think he would have like put his arms around." There's a couple things. He goes, "You never know, depending on what day you ran into Mike." But he thinks that he would have put his arms around and said, "Listen, this is you're gonna have to pay for this and that kind of stuff." But would have kind of put his arm around him and not had this anger like, "Hey, how dare you defile something?" So he would have instead turned around and tried to make it a way of teaching this young boy how to be on a different path than what he was going on. I thought it was really interesting. The way
that's true. I mean, that's true. I will disagree with one thing is that, I think he would have been, I think his response would have been the same regardless of the day. He, because he was that wild child for a bit too, in college you kind of do silly things, and he liked danger a little bit, and So I think his response to that would have been just that, is to take that child, because, listen, I work with kids and I understand that, kids don't just do that for no reason. They got to be hurting. Right. And so I think that he would have definitely tried to help him. I think so.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, I was a police officer, and I told people often that I could have ended up on either side of the bars. I mean, just one decision, would have changed. I could have been that other guy, right? The police were chasing, not the guy chasing the bad guy. So very fortunate. So I know what you're talking about. As we grow up, we make bad choices from time to time, but very, very fortunate that I made the choices that I did eventually. And so I want to kind of go into this time where now that he's passed and your heart's broken, you were just going to get married. But now there's all these dedications happening. They're making the movie. I'm guessing you were asked to go to some of these, like maybe the ship that was dedicated in his name, and other things, that this suddenly you become Lieutenant Mike Murphy's fiance, right? Do you begin to lose a little bit of your identity maybe during that time?
Maybe in hindsight a little bit, but I think my biggest challenge during those times were trying to stay true to him, because he was a very humble guy. He was very quiet. He was very private, and I think part of the reason why I didn't speak out about it, it's been 14 years now that I've just started talking about it now, and but during that time I felt like there was so much attention, and even his closest friends will say, like, he wouldn't have loved this, he wouldn't have been thrilled with all this, I mean, well deserving, yes, but I think that my response to all that, and I think maybe everyone grieves differently, right? And everyone responds to loss and tragedy, and trauma different ways. But I kind of took a back seat to a lot of it, because it was hard. It was really hard. It's like living it over every single day.
Right.
I mean, and this was for years. I mean, for years, front page of the news, flashing up on TV. People from reporters following me, calling me, and it was free. And it was like, it's just very hard to kind of keep going over that over and over and again. But I think my biggest thing was I kind of stayed quiet and stayed out of it. If I went to things, I was kind of in the back, because it wasn't about me. But I was also trying to honor his, what I thought, he would have wanted. So that was really, and then there was other people in my life too, as time went by, and I started to date again, and ultimately wound up getting married. You try and compartmentalize pieces of your life, because you don't want it to interfere with other things. And I think with trying to do that, I kind of suppressed too much and kind of shut it out. And and then maybe I lost a piece of myself in that process. Yes.
So one last question. I learned this on an interview I just watched that you did, that you actually watched the movie Lone Survivor. And I was kind of shocked that you watched it. How did that happen? Did you do it on purpose?
No. It was. I want to say it was probably about a year after it was released. I'd come home one night, and put my kids to bed, and I turned the TV on, and it wasn't on like right. It was like one of the movie channels, whatever. I don't remember which one it was, but it was. I was flipping through the channels, and it was on,
Hmm.
and it was a little bit of the way through, and I said, all right, I'm gonna try and keep this on, see how long I last, and um, I wound up kind of like on the floor in the fetal position, like watching this movie. And I, to be honest with you, I can't remember if I don't think I got through the whole thing in that evening when I caught it on TV. But I did kind of grin and bear it and watch it in its entirety at some point afterwards. I just felt like I needed to see it. There was some discrepancies in the story, or some things that, like anything else in Hollywood, and people will say things, and I think a part of me needed to kind of see it just to kind of confirm some stuff, and solidify some things kind of on a personal level. But yeah, it wasn't easy to watch.
Was it fairly close or way off?
I mean, look, I wasn't there.
I guess
I
mostly
definitely,
about his personality, that the way that they portrayed him as
I'll
a
tell
person.
you, I tell you what, Taylor did a good job. I actually met him.
Hmm.
And I will say that in the beginning of the movie, they start out saying that I wanted a horse, which we all laugh about. People that are close to me laugh about, because that was totally inaccurate. But um, and I was like, why are they? But Taylor Kitsch, who was the actor who portrayed Michael, did a phenomenal job. And
Hmm.
I met him. He actually comes to, there's a lake named after Michael that he used to lifeguard out here on Long Island, and there's a race that they do every year, 4 mile around the lake. And I've met Taylor twice, and I was able to have a conversation with him about, I said I was very impressed with the way, he did a very good job in Michael's mannerisms, and even his voice and his personality. That was on point. That was on point. I was impressed with that.
Yeah.
But never knowing somebody, you know what I mean? To be able to pick up on that just by having conversations with family and friends, so.
Right. Well, then your story doesn't end there. You have still more after this. What happens next?
Yeah, I got married, and you try and do your best to kind of just to move forward in life, despite something like that happening. And I was blessed to have my first son, and he's a tough kid, but we got through. And then I had a very difficult time getting pregnant with my second son, and doctors were like, well, yeah, this is really not going to happen for you. You're kind of, you're not going to have another child. And so, so there was some struggle there, and I didn't like to listen to people again telling me what I can and cannot do. And so now I have a wild 6-year-old as a result of that conversation. So, and subsequent to that, I went through a divorce. And you can connect the pieces kind of in life as you look back and say, like, people like, do you think one thing happened and then the other thing happened as a result of it? And I do believe that in life, things happen, and you find yourself in places, as a result of sometimes bad things and sometimes good things. And, you make choices, and you do things that maybe you wouldn't choose if the previous thing didn't happen to you. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so yeah, I mean, I wound up, getting a divorce, and I just felt really, really kind of stuck, and not fulfilled. And I just having gone through a tragedy, like that, I just wanted, I knew how precious life was. And it was important that I, made decisions that made me happy, and so, kind of took, my boys in tow, and it started over again. And, that was not easy to do. Divorce is hard, and, being a single mom, and now having bills to pay, and, all those things on your own is difficult. And then I was lucky enough to, during all of that, I, had a very close relationship with a friend, a guy who became a very good friend of mine. And during, sort of during my divorce, he, after my divorce, we began, kind of having a close relationship, and he was diagnosed with cancer. stage 3 cancer. And it's funny when I talk to people about sort of my relationship with he's now my boyfriend. I say, I kind of liken, I believe in relationships sometimes when you have a strong foundation, a friendship, it speaks volumes, because you can get through some really, really challenging times. And we sort of became each other's rocks, you know what I mean? And he went through a really, really hard diagnosis, really hard treatments, and, dozens and dozens of rounds of chemotherapy that kind of just, he was bedridden for many, many months, years. I mean, and it's, it's a blessing that he's still here. I mean, he fought through a lot. He fought through a lot. I think what happens in life when you surround yourself with people who understand, struggle and understand hardship and understand, because that is what really life is about, right? Is about that's what's real. That's what's real,
Mm-hmm.
And so, here he's almost 2 years cancer free now.
Wow. That's awesome.
And it's impressive, I mean, we have wonderful doctors and cancer treatments and things like that. But he fought through that, and that's commendable.
Was there any time during your life that you ever woke up and go, oh, what do I have to do? Did I break a mirror? I mean, am I stepping on too many cracks? Do I need to get some rabbit meat? I mean,
I say, I always say, how many people did I kill in a previous life? So, it's funny because yes, I adopted that mindset for many years, because it's very easy to get tripped up in that, and then I started, oh, well, your thoughts create universe and all these things. And I'm like, well, I don't think I was that negative a person, but recently, now, particularly as a result of Overcome Nation, and the things that we kind of learn every day through our trainings is that that type of thinking is not conducive to anything, and it's okay for once in a while to kind of feel sorry for yourself and say like, this really sucks, but I think, again, going back to infancy and going back to that fight, you know what I mean? That I never wanted to give up. It was almost like I had to keep going. I wanted to keep going, because I know that, like, it's life. You know what I mean? Like life is gonna be hard sometimes, and that's just the truth.
Right. So, so then you and I are both in Viseo and Overcome Nation, a fantastic team. It is amazing. I tell people all the time that I think I came to this company because of Viseo and the products, and I'm staying with Viseo because of the Overcome Nation team. I can't see myself leaving because everybody's so amazing. And I've had a really great time meeting everybody, like people like you. I mean, there's just so many people that are just amazing people. But then I go to Dallas to the convention because I didn't want to miss it, because I wanted to be there with all these people that I only see on Facebook, right? I'm seeing all these faces. I go, oh, that, and I'm now able to connect. It's like walking into my Facebook page because now I'm seeing people for real. And then you get on stage, and I had no idea, but have you ever done that before? Did you ever get up on stage or on an interview like this and share what you just shared with the world?
No, I didn't. And I was, like I said, I was very reluctant to, until I learned that I used to think it, I was strong for dealing, for managing, for plowing, putting my head down and plowing through things in life. And, I've now learned that that's not necessarily strength. You know what I mean? In fact, there could be some weakness attached to that, because it's not really facing it, and it's not really being able to sit with that uncomfortable feeling and kind of negotiate it and find a way to work through it. But no, I mean, I had never spoken for those reasons, but now, I've learned that, I can really help people, and I can really reach people, by sharing, my story, and by, just kind of normalizing things, I think, for others. Sometimes we feel that things go wrong, and because of the way social media is nowadays, people are kind of just posting up, like I always say, sunshine and rainbows. It's like, oh, everything's great and it's fantastic. And you know what, like when you start to hear people like in our team and Overcome Nation really connect by saying like, I had this struggle and really going deeper and getting raw. And that is really the human experience. So now I feel so much more comfortable and safe really to explore and talk about my experiences, because I mean, I've got to touch like one or two people with like the trajectory of my life, like in all the things I've gone through, you know what I mean? I'm thinking, okay, if somebody hears this, right? If somebody hears this and it helps them get through their day, then I feel accomplished, like then I've done something, right? And I'm proud of that. And so I'm so thankful that I've been given these tools now. To be able to kind of go out and speak to, our team at first, and kind of slowly speaking to the masses and people, in my network and other people's networks, to kind of just normalize things and it's, make people feel human.
Well, you definitely touched more than two people. There was like 600 or 700 people there that I know had some tears and just were blown away by your talk. And when you were talking, it reminds me of a tattoo that I'm planning on getting, and it's of scripture. I know that you brought up something earlier, and this isn't a biblical show of any sort, but this is one that always hits me. It's James 1:2-3, and it's consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. And when you were speaking, I just kept thinking, man, if there's anybody that has learned to come out on the other side better because of horrible experiences, I think that's your story. And like I said, it just really, it moved a lot of people. The people I was sitting next to were, asking for Kleenex and napkins, just not in necessarily that your story was sad. That is amazing that you were up there on stage. I think that was the thing, in sharing and doing it so well.
I was actually surprised. I mean, it was funny because Rick had introduced me and was like, she's probably really nervous. And I was like, am I supposed to be nervous right now? Like, and then, he hugged me and I was like, I'm really not that nervous, but I think it was because, and I say this a lot, but there's so much authenticity to our team of people, where every person in that room, is there to change their life, and is there because they've gone through hardships themselves. And so I felt safe, and I felt like, again, it was purposeful, it was purposeful. It wasn't like, whereas I felt maybe 14 years ago would have been more for attention and maybe making a couple bucks. And that was not what I was about, but now it's more of a, I'm serving and I'm in a different role now of leadership with my team. And so I want them to feel safe, to explore those things in their life. I want them to, be able to kind of accept, that they've had some hardship or things that have tested them, and really, grasp onto the tools that we're learning to help kind of change their life and make things, better for their families. And so I felt like I was really in a position to serve others. And I don't know that I've ever been put in that kind of environment where I felt like that ever before.
Yeah. I tell people that it would be selfish for you not to share your story. I've taught lots of people to write books and showed them how to become best-selling authors. And I've run into people who have good stories and they don't share it. They've hidden it. And the one thing that I often say, it'd be selfish because there's somebody out there that needs to hear your story.
Listen, human beings, they attach themselves to people who understand. I mean, it's even like when you have conversation with somebody, you want to talk to people who get it. You want to feel understood. And you don't want someone coming to be like, I understand how you feel. Like, no, you don't. You don't understand how I feel. That kind of thing. But it really gives people kind of something to hold on to and say like, okay, well, you know what? Like, if she can do it, I can do it. And that's just the way that it works. I mean, if you have nothing to really to grab onto. You have nothing really tangible to say, hey, I'm going to get through this. It's like anything. You can go and search self-help or anything that you're going through. I mean, it's so important.
Yeah, I mean, the easy solution sometimes is to go to, narcotics, right? Xanax and Valium and all these kinds of things. And, you want people not to do that and to find other ways. So is there something that you were able to do? Is there one thing that you can say that the one thing that always helped me through was this one thing that I did?
Being active and that's the one thing I think, because I've always had an active lifestyle and I was always an athlete, but like I always find that like if I kind of slack off in my routine of working out, it affects me mentally, so really kind of, being able to push through and getting physical and working out and keeping your body healthy, and it keeps your mind healthy and it keeps you moving, it keeps everything going. And that would be, even if it's people like go out for a walk, I mean, it's different levels of where people are out actively, but that is always something that I, and I always found myself being able to like run out any anger or any feelings I was having, you know what I mean? It just, you kind of you got to get it out,
Yeah. Well, you can get stuck laying in a dark room with the blinds drawn and
listen, you get there. I'm not saying that I wasn't there at any points. You know what I mean? That would be a lie. And I mean, you hit rock bottom. You got to hit rock bottom before you come up. You know what I mean? But you got to be okay with coming up.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a moment of mourning that you kind of have to go through. But getting stuck there is the problem that you don't want to have. I have a story of my own that I'm not going to share, but yeah, I remember being in that dark place and it seemed like I couldn't get out. And it took something pretty strange, which was a television show, which I'm an idiot. I got to get out of here, open the blinds, get out of the room. And I did some other stuff and I got out of it. But I so appreciate you and the fact that you got up there and shared that story. I've thought about it ever since. I don't know if it's been daily, but it's been often, and just really appreciate it because it is a story that I think even I needed to hear as much as I've gone through two divorces, unfortunately. I got 5 kids, and hearing you talk and talk about what you've been through and then how you've overcome, and now you're up there on stage talking about it was a huge moment, I think, for everybody. And so I appreciate it very much.
Yes, no, thank you for having me. We belong to a phenomenal, just a phenomenal team of people and culture, and I'm grateful and blessed, to be here. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. If you'd like to join us, just let us know. You can either contact me or contact Heather. I don't care, because I think this is a great place for people to be, both with Vaseo and Overcome Nation. But again, thank you very much. Go enjoy your penne, whatever you said.
I'll text you.
I need that because I cannot pronounce it. All right, guys. We'll talk to you later. Thank you, Heather. I appreciate it.
All right. Okay.
All right, take care.
Bye.